the statutory branch audit was a big question mark by itself. What happened was that many of the banks had made the allotment of branches and sent the communication during the last week of March. However, quite a lot of our members have expressed their apprehension that because of the travel restrictions and the pandemic being spreading around, they expressed their inability that they may not be able to take up the time the audit during the prescribed time by the appointment letters. So based on this, the banks in turn wrote to the IBA saying that this is the current situation and asked for what is the way forward. In fact, one of the things which was said was if this is going to be a hurdle, whether the bank branch audits can be substantially reduced or whether they can dispense with and things like that. This was what was there in the line of thinking by Indian Bankers Association, and they represented to RBI. RBI in turn got in touch with ICAI, and ICAI had a meeting with 83 of the separate statutory auditors. We had on a conference call, and all of us were present, and they asked us, this is the representation which has come in regarding the IBA for current year audit. As Central Statutory Auditors, we categorically gave in writing that having the bank branch audit is essential and there can be no let or go in the bank branch audit. This was communicated back through ICAI to the RBI, and RBI, in the course of understanding the situation and also the perspectives which has come from various things, and as being a regulator, came out with the circular on the 27th of April, wherein the norms which are currently there is that all bank branch audits which are above 20 crores have to be statutorily audited. Less than that, 1/5 of that has to come under audit, was dispensed with in terms of the limitation of 20 crores and 1/5 of branches below that. However, what they have maintained is they have said that 90% of the advances portfolio of the bank, including fund based and non fund based, should form part of the bank branch audit. To illustrate, for example, if you take State Bank of India, State Bank of India's loan book size is 25 lakh crores. If 25 lakh crores is the one, if 90% has to come under audit, that means 22.5 lakh crores will come under audit. That removes away 2.5 lakh crores of bank audit advances business in various branches will not now come under audit, which means roughly about 3 to 4,000 branches may not be audited of State Bank of India this year. This is the type of impact this has. However, they have also said that RBI said that it is not that all the smaller branches should be removed or no, you just skim off, only have the semi-urban and urban branches or metropolitan branches. They have also ensured that there has to be a cross-section and representation of urban, rural, semi-urban, metropolitan branches, and also keeping in mind those which are not under concurrent audit. This is where we stand in terms of the bank branch audit today. This is also consequent to the circular which has been brought in by the SEBI. SEBI normally dictates wherever listed companies are there, all public sector banks are today listed, and where it happens is that the audited financial statements of listed entities has to be submitted on or before 31st of May every year. However, this year, because of this, they have brought in a circular and a dispensation to say all listed company audits can be completed and results can be announced on or before 30th of June. There is a 1 month dispensation, which has given leeway for extending the audit. However, considering that if the situation does not improve and we are not able to take up the audit before first week of June in certain high density population areas like Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, Chennai, Ahmedabad, Jaipur, Indore, and places like that, or Hyderabad, like Bangalore and Karnataka is not part of it. It will have an impact, and possibly SEBI may extend the timeline if we are hopeful. The branch audit current year is what I told about in terms of the various parameters which has been there. The representation was done, and now after that, the RBI circular, the consolidation of PSUs has brought in a various challenges which are going to go forward because the number of branches are going to come down, and technology, the use of technology in the current year, on-site, off-site, is going to be a permanent feature in terms of the bank branch audit going forward also. When we talk about offsite, now that the RBI has come out on the 27th circular, the banks are now in the process of redoing wherever they have allotted the branches. They are now revisiting and trying to restructure and then send a revised letter of appointment, which is expected to come anywhere during the first week or before 10th of May. First week is what they are talking. So the first week of May, you will get to know the branches which you will have to do audit. And even if we are not able to travel, for example, the airline industry is informed that it is going to open up only by 1st of July, which means that we still have quite a lot of time before we are to travel for far off distances. And this time when the audit is going to happen, they are also going to ensure that it is as close to the person's place as possible, so that the travel and other things is not going to be a challenge. However, we will still have at least a week much before the audit can be commenced, or much even beyond that 1 week. This is the time which we can use to do a lot of off-site audit. And when in the course of it, what we can plan is we can start getting in touch with the branches and start asking them to send whether the notepad or whether it is a JPG or TXT files or or whatever it is, so that you can start your audit exercise sitting at your comfortable places. And the team composition this year, unlike every year, possibly it has to be lean, mean, and trying to have as less of an exposure and going about it. However, in terms of a coverage, I don't think there can be any reduction in the coverage. The entire coverage will be largely off-site and less on on-site this year. Whilst doing this, we need to be in constant communication with the branch. Even as per the standards on audit, we are supposed to be in communication with those charged with governance. So if you are in regular touch with them, this time the bank branches have been specifically asked to send as much of information the auditors as possible through on-site, off-site, so that you will be able to get, for example, you will be able to get most of the information either by way of an email or by way of sharing the documents and things like that. So the key points which we need to keep in mind in planning is that this year's audit, is going to be way different, and challenges which are going to come, you will have to be ready for it. While designing an audit program, what we need to do is that, as always, the areas which have to be covered include the audit of advances, long form audit report, tax audit, and certifications. And since we'll be dealing with that in detail, we'll have to document the audit program, so that as part of our exercise, and how we are going to do in COVID times can be slightly different than what we used to do normally. The methodologies is the internal controls. Normally, the internal controls are something which we will not be able to test in detail in a bank branch audit. However, there are very efficient methods in which we can do that. For example, if the branch has been very recently under your inspection, that is once in 15 months, the RBI inspection happens at the branches, and they give a report about it. And in the report, if the branch is high risk, medium risk, or low risk, you will be in a better position to understand, based on the risk profiling which has been done on the risk-based supervision done by the inspection. You will also be able to understand how much of reliance you can place, what is the type of the controls which are there, and what is that you can look at also. If the branch has low risk or medium risk, you can rely on that, and your exercise on that can be much more superior. While doing about audit around the system is what we are talking about, is that you are able to access all the information which are outside the system, in terms of whether it is the sanction letters, or whether it is the operation in the account by way of an account statement, or by way of various records which are available, including the communication written by the borrower, or anything like whether it's a credit audit, legal audit, inspection report, stock audit report, financial statement, insurance, and all these things are around the system. And you will be in a position to access them, because you can ask them to scan it and send it, or you can ask them to put it into a particular folder and then send it by way of an email. All that are possible. Okay. And while doing audit in the system, we are also having, as a central statutory auditors of Corporation Bank currently, what we have been given is, we have been given a remote location access. So we are in a position of sitting at home. I am able to access the entire Pinnacle. So I am able to do the entire audit of the branches which I am now allotted as part of the audit we are able to go through that and doing the audit in the system itself. We are able to access this report server. We are able to access all the reports which are there, including the exception reports, whether it's on advances or whether it's on no money laundering or whatever it is. We are able to access that and we are able to do an effective audit in the system itself. The external records is what we have talked about. The credit audit, legal audit, inspection reports, stock audit reports, financial statements, and insurance will help you to make an assessment about the account operations and the asset classification, even much before you can go in and get into the branches. What are all the issues which will come? The remote access login, as I told you, is given to us, but whether it will be given to all the bank branch auditors, it's a matter of no debate. And if the COVID situation does not improve, it might work that many of the banks may start giving that. In fact, as auditors, we have suggested to the bank also saying that you have almost about no your lower rung of one fifth or one seventh or one eighth of your branches are not under operation, not under audit. Okay, and there will be not much of transactions also happening. So, in terms of the number of auditors, kindly give a remote location access of the each branch which is not under audit. One system can be directly connected to the auditor, where we know the auditor should be in a position to remotely access the entire system and do the audit. This has been very positively taken by the bank. They said that they will coordinate with that back-end team and see that no, whether it can be done. And if that is possible to be done, almost all the bank branch auditors will be able to get the remote access. And even we can start off the audit right away without having to wait for the opening up of the travel restrictions. And the next issue which will come up while doing about the audit is that there have been a lot of errors which we have been observing in the master records, whether it is in terms of the sanction terms or whether it is in terms of the not updating the stock records or various other parameters. So as branch auditors, we need to first look at the errors in the master records, because if you don't do that, then the throughput which comes, the report which comes is always a matter of not very reliable. And as I told you, that risk-based supervision of current and previous year's classification. For example, if a branch was high risk last year and it has come to medium risk, it will help you to understand that there will be a fair amount of improvement. If vice versa happens, if a branch was under low risk last year and has become medium risk this year, we need to expand our audit scope and our program itself. Red flagged accounts are those accounts which are fraud prone, and in the last 1 year, the amount of fraud which has been reported in the banking system is fairly large. And progressively, the question is coming: what is it that the auditors have been doing when so much of frauds are being reported? I would like our professionals to take a slightly additional precaution to see whether there is any frauds which are happening in the account, and whether any account has been flagged as a red flagged account. And if an account has been flagged as a red flagged account, the resolution has to happen within 6 months from the date on which the red flag has been done. Otherwise, you need to report about it. And any fraud above 1 crore, we are supposed to directly report it to the RBI itself. And anything less than 1 crore, you can write to the management of the bank. And when we are talking about the frauds, we also need to see that RBI has come out with what is called as early warning signals. These early warning signals are 42 in numbers, which is there very elaborately done in the fraud circular. And because it's so many are there, I'm referring to that. You can look at it. Okay. Most of the accounts will have 1 or 2 or 3 of them. But if something is there and it's material and about 15, 20 of those are part of it, or 10 of them are there, but it is material, then we need to look at it whether such accounts has to be classified as a fraud account, or whether we need to escalate the matter and things like that. In terms of the various securities, whether it is a movable or immovable securities which are there, we need to access the CERSAI portal. There's a CERSAI portal which is there, where all securities which are charged to the bank are all already in that. So if you want to see the security offsite without having to look at it physically, you will still be able to see what are the types of securities in each of the accounts which are there. Similarly, whether accounts have been accounts beyond 5 crores, there is a weekly report of accounts where borrowers' limits are beyond 5 crores. There is a portal called CRILC, Credit Report Information. There you can go and see whether the account has been classified as an NPA in other banks or not, and what is the status of this so that you can get to have an idea about it. And branches denying remote access, you can always ask them to send Notepad, G Drive, JPG text files for you to start with audit. Normally, the bank branch audit takes into account your verifications. Here, this is not going to happen. What are all the verifications, physical verification we do? We do the cash, valuable securities, valuables in security, gold, loan documents, borrower files, charges, financial statements which are there, and unit inspection reports, and physical inspection of a unit of a large borrower. These are all physically only possible and not possible remotely, because we need to go there to verify these things. And I'm sure that once the lockdown is open, we will be able to do this portion of our physical verifications at the on-site procedure which we'll be following. Then the audit starts talking about your audit of incomes, expenses, assets, and liabilities. Kindly look at the interstate masters and the interstate masters, and take out a list of all your at least top 25 or top 50 accounts. All our large borrower accounts beyond 2 crores has to be mandatorily audited, and samples of other than that of each of the product, one or two can be taken, and verify whether the interstate master and the sanction letters are properly there and documented, because we have seen that very often whenever a term loan has been given and when there's been a change in the software, or whether they moved in from an earlier software to a new software or upgraded or whatever it is, and some of the documents have been migrated, we find that the interstate masters, what has been updated, has been wrongly done. For example, if it is MCLR based, then they have to do it as MCLR as on date. RBI has mandated all interest in borrower account should be on the basis of marginal cost of lending rate, MCLR base. However, we find in our experience, even today, quite a few of the banks, branches, and things like that, they are applying on the base rate, which is not as per the RBI norms. So you need to, whereas the sanction would have changed, but the master has not been changed. Similarly, in terms of interest paid, kindly take a population of the large deposit accounts which are there under various categories, whether it is a fixed deposit, whether it is a savings bank account, whether it is no reinvestment deposits or no whatever it is. Kindly take out a few of them and then document it. And also, they have the interstate product which are being done. There will be a separate working of that. You can access that and ask them to send you, and they both for the interest income as well as for the interest paid. The entire product working will be available for you. You can check for the rate of interest, you can check for whether the application is correctly done, and also whether the interest is correctly done. So this will help you to understand the large item of interest, which is an income as well as an outgo in the P&L account, is audited. Similarly, the commissions and other incomes also, we need, if it is going to be significant at the branch level, we need to have our audit perspectives to look at it. And in terms of commission, if the commission, you will have to look at the accounting policy. If there's commission is given for financial guarantees or bank guarantees, which are performance guarantees and things like that. And if it's going for a number of years, some banks have the system of accounting for the income and during that year only, and not taking for the subsequent years. Some banks have the system of on receipt basis accounting that. So you will have to look at the accounting policy of each of the branches for large commission income, whether it is correctly accounted or not. The next item of the verification for us is the audit of advances, which I will deal with slightly elaborately, and classification and provision. This audit of advances and classification and provision, whilst I will deal with it in some limited manner, I will leave it for the Q&A for maximum amount of questions, because I would like to have my presentation based on the questions which comes upon that. And in case no question comes, I can definitely deal with it far more elaborately later. Frauds, when it comes to frauds, there is a reporting of frauds which is there. There's a fraud monitoring report, FMR1 is there. And you will have to look at whether the branch has come under any of the frauds have been reported from the branch. And if that is the case, then you can access the FMR. In case there has been fraud but not reported, then it is our duty to ensure that it is escalated. And when it comes to provisions, contingent assets, and contingent liabilities, in terms of provisions, as your P&L account, all your year-end provisions of whether it's for rent or generally it gets paid at the branch level for rent or security or or internet access or telephones or courier, whatever the provisions are to be done, whether they be correctly done, is to be seen for us. In terms of contingent assets, current year we are going to see that quite a lot of challenges in terms of what is that in terms of contingent assets and contingent liabilities, given that if there is going to be a revision in the rent, which has been called upon, but last 2 years that has not been approved by the competent authority. So the rent which should have been paid will be continued to be the old rent, whereas the increased rent would not have been paid. So you kindly look into the rental agreement of the particular branch and see whether no the rent which is being charged to the P&L account is the current rent, or whether it is no there is any correspondence going on in terms of the increase in the rent, and if it has not been increased by the competent authority, to that extent you need to sort of either ascertain whether it's a clear liability or a contingent liability, and then accordingly report thereon. Now we come to the couple of RBI circulars which has happened during the current year. Even before the COVID, there are a couple of circulars which has come. One is in terms of the relaxation which was given to the commercial real estate. By way of 7th February circular, RBI extended the date of commencement of commercial operation of commercial real estate projects, considering the real estate industry was going through a period of pain and lots of challenges happening. So what happened was they extended the time limit of DCCO by 1 year to commercial real estate. How does it make a difference? This was already there. The extension of commencement of commercial operation by 1 year for infrastructure projects was already embedded in the RBI Master Circular. However, that excluded commercial real estate. So now commercial real estate has also been brought into that. So same conditions which are there for the other industrial project finance of industrial nature, of infrastructure nature, has been now extended to RBI to commercial real estate also. But the conditions for that is that the extension can be for a period of 1 year, which means it is other than infrastructure, non-infrastructure project loans terms. 1 year from the original date of commencement of commercial operation. And the other terms of repayment should continue the same, which means if originally the repayment was for 78 months, then now after the 1 year extension which is given, it has to continue for 78 months. It cannot be made 120 months now. If you are making it 120 months, then it's a change in the term, then it will become a restructured account and it has to be classified as NPA. Whereas if it remains 78 months after that, then it is the same. Second condition is that on the date of extending this DCCO, the account should continue to be a standard asset. The third is that during the period of this extension, if in the opinion of the bank management or the branch auditors, if the project is not to be seen as being viable or being stopped or being for various reasons, including environmental concerns or whatever it is, the account can be classified or downgraded at any time, including invoking the 90-day norms. So this is one circular which gives you the relief for real estate, commercial real estate during the current year. However, the terms of commercial real estate is syncing with not infrastructure, other infrastructure projects for which this dispensation was given earlier. The next circular which came is also before the COVID. This is the micro, small, medium enterprises have been given the benefit of getting one-time restructuring. They started way back in 2018 when the first of the circular came and they extended it, and then by way of the 1st January 2019, the timeline was extended till 31st December 2019 for accounts which are SME accounts which are registered with as GST or those having exemption and making an application, and if the application is considered and on the date of application if it is standard asset, till 31st December 2019 as a standard asset as per the earlier one. So now they have extended this by way of this 11th February 2012. The timeline has been extended till 31st December 2020. But what it means is that such MSME account should be accounts which should be a standard asset as on 1st January 2020. The first condition. Second is that during the time the application for restructuring is there, the asset classification will continue. That means if the asset was in standard asset as on 31st of December 2020, but on 15th February 2020, it was falling into NPA, and the restructuring is happening on 20th of February, then the account would have got downgraded. Because on the date of sanction, 20th of February 2020, the account became NPA on 15th February, so the account has to be classified as NPA. However, this is the dispensation given as on the date of sanctioning the terms and also all the satisfactory compliances of the terms of condition should happen on 31st December 2020 for such one-time restructuring of micro, small, medium enterprises. And given the standstill for 3 months, which has been given by way of the subsequent circular, that may also get embedded into this. But I don't see if an account is a standard asset as on 31st of March 2020, and going forward, if it is going to have challenges, okay, how this is going to help, because if the account is already slipping into NPA, this may not be very valid. However, the timeline has been extended. The MSMEs are, without having to wait for the COVID and the relief given by the government, this circular automatically doubles up. And because of this, if any account which has not restructured early on of the restructuring mechanism on December 2020, and liberalized restructured terms can happen, and such MSMEs need not be classified. The next circular which came is in terms of the RBI circular of 27th March, wherein they said that considering the COVID, the timelines for classification of NPA will be having a standstill clause. That is to say, an account which was standard as on 29th February 2020 will have a standstill of asset classification for a period of 3 months till 31st May 2020. By having given this sort of a benefit to them, they said that no, that the repayments falls due either in terms of a term loan or whatever it is, need not be serviced, and it can be rolled over, and the board and each bank can take a call and they can sanction them. However, what was not clarified and was not very specific and clear in that, but very clearly addressed in the 17th April circular, wherein they said that accounts, those accounts which are having, which are not regular also, for example, those which are coming under SMA 1 or SMA 2, that is to say, where the repayments have not happened for January and February, even then, 60 days being over also, as on 29th February 2020, were not NPA accounts. Even such accounts which are having default were eligible for the purposes of this, which means this, for this year's audit, the asset classification has been reset with reference to the discharging of the obligations of a borrower as of 31st December 2019 and not 31st March 2020. So to that extent, if an account has serviced all its interest, installment and other things as on 31st December, such accounts won't be NPA, and such accounts will be eligible for this dispensation of the standstill being available, and the eligible application has to be made, and the banks have to make provisions also has been brought in by way of the 17th circular. Asset classification, I will deal with it in a slightly elaborate manner, and this is a very important one. Whereas the provision which has been called upon is 5%, minimum of 5% should be made on or before 31st March 2020, and minimum of 5% should be done by June 2020. However, a bank like Axis Bank has taken a call to make the entire 10% provision as of 31st March 2020 itself. In the normal course, as a substandard asset would have taken a hit of 15%, whereas the bank has taken a call of taking the entire 10% in the first place. What are all the audit procedures we need to look at in terms of this? We'll look at it. The entire circular on COVID, which is the major focus of today, reads as follows. I'll quickly go through that and I'll take the issues later. COVID regulatory package is basically meant to mitigate the burden of debt servicing brought about by disruptions on account of COVID and to ensure continuity of viable businesses. Rescheduling of payments of term loans and working capital facilities is what it talks about. And this applies to commercial banks, regional rural banks, small finance banks, local banks, cooperative banks, all India financial institutions, NBFCs and HFCs. However, the condition for this is that there should be a permission granted to the borrower of 3 months of payment of all installments falling due between March 1 and May 31. So unless it is granted, you will not be in a position to give the benefit of asset classification to them. The repayment schedule for such loans are also the same residual tenor will be shifted across the board by 3 months after the moratorium. The moratorium period is till 31st May 2020 and the repayments will be shifted by 3 months is what it says. However, when we see the EMI calculation for various things, a 3 months change, okay, based on the tenor is not less than increase of 5 months to almost as much as 30 months, where the loan tenor is like a housing loan of 15 years and things like that. So that is the type of impact which happens for by capitalizing these 3 months of interest and installment and making the repayment to go forward. The repayment schedule for such loans, interest shall continue to grow on the outstanding portion, which means there is no benefit of not applying interest on this. So as far as the bank is concerned, the interest income can be considered. As far as the borrower is concerned, the interest is payable, and this portion of that during the moratorium period. The next thing is in respect to the working capital facilities sanctioned in the form of cash credit, OD. The lending institutions are permitted to defer the recovery of interest applied in respect of all such facilities from March 20 to May 20. However, the accumulated interest in such operating accounts shall be recovered immediately after the completion of the period, which means the benefit which is given for term loans of extending the interest and installment and asking it to be paid later is not applicable to working capital limits, because immediately upon opening up, the entire interests which are due, for example, interests of January, February, March, not serviced as on 31st March, because of this dispensation, would not have become due and would not be classified as NPA. And for the month of April and May, by the time it comes, the accumulated interest shall be recovered immediately after the completion of this period. So which means now the 5 months interest will become a burden the moment it gets opened up in an operating account as per cash credit or overdraft. However, the silver lining is RBI's clarification earlier also, when interest falls due. And interest falls due notwithstanding when it's applied, whether it's applied on a daily basis, monthly basis or quarterly basis, the interest falls due for payment only at quarter ends. So to that extent, even after the opening up of this, the interest of January, February, March, if it is recovered, the account will continue to be a standard asset. Otherwise, if the interest is not recovered immediately after the period, in such working capital accounts, many delinquencies are expected to happen immediately. And what are the other easing of the working capital facilities which are talked about by this circular? In respect of the working capital facilities sanctioned in the form of CCOD to borrowers facing stress on account of the economic fallout of the pandemic, lending institutions may recalculate the drawing power. For example, if the drawing power on stock was 25% and 40% on book debts, now they can reduce it to 10% and 15%. So thereby, with the same levels of working capital which a borrower has, his maximum permissible bank finance eligibility for net working capital will increase, based on which he will be in a position to enjoy a higher limit. And most of the banks have already come out with a scheme to give additional limits as part of COVID in the existing CCOD accounts. Thereby, you will be able to have access without having to go through a complete process of it, and you will be in a position to enjoy the borrowers will be able to enjoy the benefits of a higher working capital limit to tide over the situation. This is happening because of reducing the margins or by reassessing the working capital cycle. For example, if the stock is taken and the stock of 3 months or 4 months, or if there is stocks beyond 6 months is not considered, or debtors beyond 90 days is not considered, even that can be relaxed. Instead of trying to say only the percentages, even this can be relaxed, and this is expected to give relief, and this relief shall be available in respect of all changes effected up to May 31, 2020, and shall be contingent upon the lending institutions, most important, satisfying themselves that the same is necessitated on account of economic fallout of COVID-19. In case an institution was already closed in January 2020, or December 2020. You will find that this unit is not suffering on account of COVID. There is a systemic problem about the borrower, and the borrower in any case would have become an NPA. For such borrowers who are not affected by COVID but their problems are much earlier, this benefit is not to be extended. Similarly, if there is going to be institutions which are doing fairly well, okay, not many industries are there, except some to the extent retail and hospitals are working on 20-25%. All industries are otherwise getting affected. But if a unit is already suffering some serious problems earlier, such institutions are not to be there because the banks have to satisfy themselves that it is on account of the COVID that the borrower requires this assistance, and then only it can be extended. Further, the accounts provided relief under these instructions shall be subject to subsequent supervisory review with regard to the justifiability on account of the economic fallout. This means Reserve Bank of India after this will be making a closer scrutiny by way of subsequent supervisory review of each bank about the justifiability on account of the extensions given. So it's not a blanket one where banks will be able to do something and get away with it, especially in case of large projects where there has been delinquencies. For example, huge infrastructure project of putting up a real estate. If about 20 floors are supposed to come and the timeline was getting over, only about one floor has come and 19 floors have not come, timeline is over. This is not going to enable the bank to give that extension to them to be out of that. So these sort of things will be looked into by API. Sorry. Since the moratorium, deferment, recalculation of the drawing power is being provided specifically to enable the borrower to tide over economic fallout of COVID-19, this shall not be treated as concession or change in terms and conditions of loan agreement due to financial difficulty, because if that were to be considered, then as per RBI now, such accounts has to be classified as NPA. So they have specifically gone on record to say this is not to be treated on that. Okay. Because the RBI came out with a prudential framework for resolution of stressed accounts in 2019, dated 7th June 2019, where they put a timeline of 270 days within which if the resolution doesn't happen, then additional provisioning of such accounts have to be done at the rate of 20% and things like that. So if that were to be applied in these cases, then the provision requirement in the banks would have been more. So in order to say that this is because of an extraneous situation, not on account of the regular stress accounts much prior to this event, they have clearly said that this is not to be included as part of it. Consequent to such a measure, it shall not result in asset classification downgrade. Continuing on that, the asset classification of term loans which are granted relief as per para 2 shall be determined on the basis of revised due dates and the revised repayment schedule. As I told you, coming to COVID, it is not that unlike the DCCO where the timeline has to be the same. Here, a very flexible and reduced repayment obligations can be given for term loans going forward as part of the COVID relief by the banks based on the effective cash flow and other things. And based on which the asset need not be classified, and going forward, the revised due dates determining asset classification. Similarly, working capital facilities where relief is provided and the SMA accounts are out of order shall be evaluated, considering the application of accumulated interest immediately after the completion of the deferment period is being paid as per the revised terms. So, in case of working capital limits, the payment of the interest post this concessional period of 31st May will be a major criteria for asset classification. If the interest is not paid, then the asset classification for operating accounts will start applying for the March quarter itself. Sometime during June, if the payment does not come, it will be classified as NPA unless RBI comes out with subsequent dispensation on this matter. The rescheduling of payments, including interest, will not qualify as a default for the purpose of supervisory reporting. What happens is normally if an account becomes NPA or there is default or if there is going to be a number of days of overdue, all the banks have to report into what is called as credit information corporations. These credit information corporations has the track record of the individual borrowers. For example, if an account was say 75 days overdue as on February, an account which is 75 days over on February, because of this dispensation of say 90 days, as of 31st May, will be 165 days of overdue. If 165 days overdue is reported and it's going to lie in the credit record of a borrower, it will seriously affect his ability to borrow. So what has been brought out is this dispensation given in terms of the revised COVID circular, the standstill period will not be treated as period of default and should not be included for the purpose of reporting to either the credit information corporations or CIBIL about the increase in debt. To that extent, even if during this period a person has not been able to pay, at the end of 31st May, in the given illustration, the amount of overdue or default will be only for 75 days, not for 160. This is what it means. So as to say that the credit information by lending institutions, the credit information corporation shall ensure that the actions taken by lending institutions pursuant to the above announcement do not adversely impact the credit history of the beneficiaries. This is not to be treated as default. Then coming to what are all the what are all the things to be done and additional provision. Auditor's role. Granting of moratorium of 3 months of payment of all term loans which are falling due or working capital. Some banks have given what is called as blanket permission to everybody to avail. They've said that we are extending it to everybody. Unless somebody wants not to have this, he has to write to the bank and then the bank will consider such persons not to be given this benefit. Some other banks have taken the role that they have sent out a notice to people and they have said that if you want a dispensation, then you need to make an application based on what is the board approved policy of the bank for which you are doing the audit. You need to take cognizance of it. If the bank has given extension to everybody, such banks will be in a better position because then such accounts which would have otherwise become NPA will not have to be classified as NPA. Whereas such banks which has given the benefit only to people who are exercising that, the other accounts will continue to become will be classified as per the normal thing, and only those who have availed of this benefit and the permission has been granted, they will be able to be having the dispensation. In respect of accounts classified as standard assets on 29, even if overdue, moratorium period wherever granted. When they say even if overdue, it is where for the first 17th of April they have said accounts which are SMA also can be given that, and this is a very important one. In the moratorium period, wherever granted, they will be excluded by the lending institutions for the number of days for the purpose of asset classification. In respect of CC/OD accounts, including on SMA accounts, the provisioning in respect of accounts in default, where asset classification benefits are extended, by the circular dated 17th April. For the first time, they had said that it should be 10%, and of course, as I told you, it will be before March 5, not less than 5%, and before June, the balance of not less than 5%. Now we ask few questions. We have said that the account need not be classified as NPA if the permission has been granted for non-repayment of interest or installment. Okay, but can I extend? For example, somebody who was supposed to give his stock statements from August onwards, he has not given stock statement, or for example, September onwards, he has not given the stock statement. From August, he has not given the stock statement. What happens is, as of February, since it is no less than 6 months, the account would not have been classified as NPA, even though the drawing power is not mentioned. However, because of this COVID circular, can you extend the benefit for a person who has not submitted his stock statement from August 2019 till 31st March 2000, or 31st May? In my opinion, those are not covered by this, because the very fact of the RBI's relief measure is where due to COVID, there are problems in terms of economic viability, operation, and cash flow situation. They have extended this benefit. Non-submission of stock statement is nothing to do with it. It only means either the borrower is not disciplined, or the borrower's business is not there, or he has not given. And in the absence of such, similarly, if an account is not renewed for more than 7 months as on February, 6 months as on February, and 7th month for March, In such cases, this dispensation, this circular, beneficial circular of RBI cannot be applied. It's only for payment and other processes this can be done. So kindly keep a note on it. If the bank is giving extension to everybody, including for technical defaults, such things are not permitted. Banks permitted to grant a moratorium of 3 months on payment of installments. This has to be looked in terms of the board policy. And provisions for standard assets are only applicable for accounts under default, which includes SMA accounts. These are all things which I have told. Recalculation. Such dispensation can be to all these things. All these I have covered in my presentation. Now coming to some of the issues which can come. This year when you go for audit or even sitting at your place, kindly do the audit with respect. The asset classification when you are looking at as on 31st March 2020, kindly ask the branch to furnish you for the similar accounts which are NPA, the NPA list as on 31st March 2019. If an account was substandard as on 31st March 2019, okay, that needs to move to doubtful one account on 31st March 2020. Similarly, if it was doubtful one on 31st March 2019, that should go to doubtful 2 this year. And accounts which are doubtful 2 as on 31st March 2018 will become doubtful 3 in the current year. We have in our experience seen that in many cases this is not being happening, either because of the software issues or because of not moving off, or in between they for a very short time they upgrade the account and then it gets downgraded. The system based NPA classification is not foolproof for auditors to have a look at it. So in the case of NPA accounts, kindly look at this and document it as part of your audit evidence. And in the course of doing this, you will find that many more MOCs will keep cropping up, which is our experience. Next is the accounts which are advanced accounts upgraded versus restructured account. Are they both same? An account where the repayments are due, have been paid, the account can get upgraded. Accounts where the repayments are made, can it be upgraded in terms of restructured account? There is a fundamental difference. If you see the Master Circular para 4.2.5, it says an account can be upgraded if the overdues in the account are repaid. Okay. When an account is classified as an NPA, if say 8 installments are overdue and the account has been classified as NPA, if the borrower pays 6 installments and the number of installments overdue becomes 2 in the course of the repayment, account will automatically get upgraded to standard asset by the system, because number of installments due falls below 60, or the number of days for which the default in a working capital account is less than 60 or 90, so account gets upgraded. However, when it comes to an account which is restructured, see Annexure 5 and where the restructuring terms are all there as part of the RBI Master Circular, the terms for upgrading an account which is restructured is slightly different in the sense that when an account is restructured, for the first 12 months, it is in a specified period. Even if the entire overdues are all paid, 0 overdues, it should continue as a non-performing advance for a period of 12 months. Number 2, at the end of 12 months, if all the repayment restructured terms are complied with, then after that 12-month period, specific period, the entire overdue should be paid. That means to say there cannot be a single day's overdue or 1 rupee overdue in such accounts for such accounts to upgrade it. So this is a fundamental difference between an upgrading of an account which is not restructured and upgradation of an account which is restructured. As auditors, we need to keep this in mind and look at it during the course of our audit. Then technical non-compliance is.
Suresh sir, can I? A few questions have come.
Yeah, you can ask me.
Okay, right. Just a minute. This was a question from CA Tara Bevinje. How do you get to know which are the red flagged accounts? Will it be available in inspection report? How do you see the classification of loans in other banks?
That's Tara, there are 2 things. One is, number 1, red flagged accounts or accounts for which frauds are there. So in the course of your audit, you should give them what is called as a letter of engagement. It will call for, are there any frauds in the branch, either by the branch or against the branch. Then in the course of discussion with the branch manager, you will have to record to say that if the branch manager says that there are no frauds, okay, in your management representation letter, take it in writing. Or you can ask for the fraud file which will be available at the branch. So ask them to bring, whether it is there or even if he says no, ask him to produce a fraud file. He will say we don't have any file. Ask him to open a new file in which let him prepare one note saying that there are no frauds in that. Let him type that, sign that, one copy of it, let him give it to you, which means there are no fraud at the branch. However, if there are frauds, there will be files related to the fraud. If there is a borrower fraud or whether it is a third party fraud or whatever it is, there will be files which will be available at the branch and you will be able to access that. And second, if there is going to be an internal inspection or a RBI inspection which has happened in that, if the fraud has happened in the branch earlier to that, if they have covered it, you will be able to have an access to that. So you will be able to read that inspection report in that if it is there, you can note down on that. Okay. So this is how you will be going about doing and seeing whether any. And next is that there may not have been a fraud, but there may be an apprehension that there a fraud has happened. Okay. For example, an FIR is filed or a matter is escalated. Okay. Then what is called as red flagging the account. This is the process, beginning of the process. So ask the branch manager if there is any account which has been there, which has been red flagged at the branch. And if they say no, you kindly ask them to type out a small letter saying that there are no red flagged accounts in the branch. If they say yes, then they will produce it, you'll be able to look at it. The second question is? The second part of that question. How will you find out whether the accounts are NPA in other branches? There is a report which is called as CRILC report, CRILC. Advances above 5 crores, the entire banking system on a day-to-day basis every week, it gets reported. And if you ask them the CRILC report of the borrower, the CRILC report will be downloaded by the branch and given to you, in which the loans enjoyed by the borrower in all other financial institutions will get reported. Asset classification, all those places also will be available. So advances above 5 crores, kindly ask for the CRILC report as part of your audit evidence. And if you are able to verify that, you will be able to see whether in other branches or other financial institutions, the accounts are performing or non-performing.
Yes,
next.
Sir. Can I go for next question?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a standard statement by the bankers that asset classification and provisioning norms are system driven and there is no manual intervention. Since the verifications are conducted on selective basis, how to mitigate this risk? This is from Jafar.
Very interesting question, Jafar. Point is that it is system-based classification of performing and non-performing advances. With due respect, the entire system is not foolproof or very reliable as auditors. Because as auditors, we need to take what is called as professional skepticism. And when we test it on that parameter, this fails. In our opinion, we have seen that human intelligence in the audits is not something which the software is able to replicate. The fundamental reason is that if you look at even a Finacle or whatever it is, they were classifying that they run that program once in a quarter, because of which it classifies an account as NPA at quarter ends, whereas an account would have become NPA at any time during the quarter. So it doesn't guarantee you that the system is correctly done. Second is, if the system is classifying an account, the technical parameters will not come into play. For example, if there is more than 50% reduction in the net worth of the borrower, that is not known to the system. Only as an auditor, when you look at it and you find and you have unit visit or you see the financials and find there is more than 50% reduction in the net worth. Okay, then you will find that the account is not to be classified as NPA or to be downgraded from substandard to doubtful. So system-based NPA is not something which is to be relied upon. Few tips which I can give you is, kindly go and look at the SMA accounts. Okay, accounts which are classified as SMA, and then start looking at it closely. Okay, and there are other accounts which also can be done. For example, if there are going to be bills payable in a particular bank, kindly start looking closely into that. This may be a check purchase at the end of the year to ensure that the account does not become NPA. Subsequently, ask the details on date on which the check has been presented. The check is honored or dishonored. The check is dishonored, then automatically you will know that this effect should not be given there. Then you will find that the account will become NPA. So this is not known to the system. And similarly, there are lots of things which the system does not recognize at all. For example, the interest on non-performing advances. Okay, account will classify the account as NPA. However, the interest will be reversed only for last 90 days because that would have been what would have been programmed for it. Because if an account is becoming NPA, each quarter you are running, then they will be reversing the interest for that quarter. However, as per RBI norm, the entire interest which is not serviced, whether it is 9 months or 1 year, or even if in case of project loans, before that there could have been a gestation period and 2 years of timeline could have been given for non-servicing the interest, and after the project kickstarts, the interest will also be part of capitalization and all. Even that entire interest for 2 years, 3 years also has to be reversed. All these are software has its own inherent limitations, and audit only will be able to bring out all these things. In fact, I was about to cover a couple of these things also. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. The next question is whether recalculation of margin or drawing powers require consent of controlling authorities.
In this case, not required because RBI has permitted, okay, that the recalculation is possible. However, what is being talked about is each board of a particular bank has to adopt this policy, and they have to issue a circular to the branches to get it effective. And based on the normal hierarchy of the sanction procedures and who has authority for it, whether it's the branch powers or whether it is the zonal office powers or whether it's the head office powers or the board powers, then the competent authorities will be giving the leeway for the respective changes which will happen. And if the competent authority has given the respective changes, then automatically it can be done. If it's a branch powers, the branch manager himself is eligible to give that sort of dispensation, and that will be permitted.
Yes, sir. The next is stock statement provided are not complete in all respects or simply gives a total of stock in debtors, whether to be considered or rejected for classification purposes by Virendra.
Virendra, what needs to be done is that if the stock statement does not give, it's a blanket statement, one number is given. Okay. Especially if it is accounts beyond 1 crore, okay, of working capital limits, what you need to get is the banks will be getting what is called as a yearly stock audit. And normally the stock audits are completed on or before December, which means even for the current year, you can ask for the stock audit reports. In the stock audit report, if you find deficiencies and things like that, then you can ask for the financial statements of the last audited accounts and last year 31st March 2019 stock statement. So if the stock statement and the audited figures, the stock is going to be significantly varying, and the stock audit report brings in a lot of variances and discrepancies, you can rely on all these things, and based on that, you can take a call that whether the account needs to be continued to be held as a standard asset or whether it needs to be downgraded as a non-performing.
Yes, sir. The next question is little lengthy. Account being classified as NPA for the first time, unrealized interest has to be reversed. It is seen that neither Finacle nor any other software does not calculate the unrealized interest for that current year and year previous to that, although it is the RBI norm. Please throw some light on this issue by Mohan.
Right?
Mohan,
I tell you, you are absolutely right. In fact, what happens is that all these softwares are all available, they are not reliable. As auditors, we need to look at it closely as part of our audit. What we need to do is that if an account is non-performing, we'll have to first test it whether it's continuing to be a standard asset or not. If an account is not classified as NPA, our fundamental duty is to see whether it is going to continue as standard asset or NPA. especially in the case of large advances and other things which you have to take it as part of our audit scope. If an account is classified as NPA, what are all the other things which we need to do? First is that if an account is classified as NPA, first thing what you is doing in the current year, especially the date of classification of NPA, whether it's correctly done or not, is something which as auditor will have to do. If there are going to be say 30 accounts which are becoming NPA during the current year, based on the value limit, at least all large advances and at least top 10 accounts or 15 accounts, even if it is below that limit and all, kindly look at whether the date of classification of NPA is correct or not. In our opinion, many times we find when we ask for the record, whether it is the sanction letters and the repayment terms or no dates since which the irregularities are there, operations are not happening and things like that, we normally find that an account which is classified as no substandard asset in the current year for the first time undergoes a change and most of the time it becomes doubtful advances. Okay. Having done that, the next point is whether the interest during that period, whether it is correctly reversed. For example, an account is classified as NPA on, say, 15th of February 2000, say 31st of January. If a monthly classification has happened, say 31st January, account has been classified as NPA. So it becomes substandard asset. Whereas we'll have to also, as auditor, look at it whether the interest has been reversed correctly. We'll have to ask for a statement of accounts. Whether it's operating account or a terminal account, all accounts, you'll have to take the statement of accounts, find out what are all the interest debited in the account, see in the operating account what is the amount of credit which has come. If the credit which has happened after the debits have happened, then it is treated as realized. If the debits are more and the amounts of credits are less, and if the amounts of debits are running for number of years, as many number of years. For example, if an educational loan is there, 8 years, he has not serviced interest. All the 8 years interest we need to reverse, notwithstanding the fact the software is not capable of doing that, because we have seen, even in Finacle, they have a problem that they cannot put a 4-digit 1,000 days of reversal going back, it's not possible. So it can restrict it to 999 days, which means only about 2.5 years of time. Whereas the entire interest has to be reversed. This is something is part of your audit perspective you'll have to keep, and you will have to do that yourself. And it will result in MOCs.
Yes, sir.
In fact, if you look at it, my issues which I have told, interest reversal software issues is what I wanted to cover. Good, your question came already before that itself. Asset classification of NPA during the current year is what I talked about. Okay, to check whether an account is NPA, and if not, you'll have to classify. If it's an NPA, date of NPA, so that whether it's substandard or doubtful as we see. Similarly, in the case of no account which is non-performing, you'll have to see what is the realizable value of security. And I'll come to that later. Okay. So, yeah. So, technical non-compliances of fraud. Yeah, any more questions?
Yeah, I think 2 questions are there.
Yeah, take it.
Can we ask the branch? Can we ask the branch to convert the data into Excel and send us along with the basic data? Whether they have the option to do. This is by Nirupama.
Yeah, Nirupama, banks don't have the Excel and MS Word in their system. They are not. They are no. The systems are disabled for that. Okay, so they will not be able to do that. So what they will be able to do that is they will have the reporting formats, whether it is a TXT, JPG, RAR or no, or Notepad or no. These are the things, reporting format, they will send it to you. Yesterday, my good friend Venugopal must have helped you to understand that from the reporting from this sort of reports, how as auditors we will be able to convert it into Excel and make use for audit purposes. So we need to do it ourselves. They are prohibited from accessing any of this MS Word or MS Documents or MS Excel and things.
Yes. So this is a question by one article student, Karthik. How to determine materiality level or performance materiality level, and what would be the benchmark I should consider as per SCA 320 with respect to the branch?
Very simple, Karthik. Point is that first of all, in the case of audit of advances, okay, or in the case of any other item, okay, materiality aspects are fairly well designed in the SA 320 itself. That anything above 5% or 7%, you can keep it as a materiality threshold. For example, if you are going to look at expenses heads, you can keep it as 5% or 3% or 2% also, because nature of heads may not be much. When it comes to audit of advances, it is well defined. RBI itself in its master circular has said any advance which is more than 2 crores is treated as a large advance, or anything less than that. If it is going to be 5% of the total advances portfolio of the branch, for example, to illustrate, if the branch is having an advance of 10 crores, 5% of that comes to 50 lakhs. Okay. So all advances which are 5%, which is 50 lakhs, or 2 crores, whichever is less, should be coming as part of your audit. Okay. So whereas if you find the rural branches, none of the accounts are 50 lakhs. The same illustration, 10 crores, all the advances, the maximum advance is say only 25 lakhs. You cannot say I will not touch any of these things because nothing is material, because the sample size has to include material ones, non-material ones, and areas, so that you have a composition of understanding the whole thing. Even advances about 25 lakhs, you may take 10 of them, and different products you may take, agriculture term loan you may take, you can take crop loans, you may take jewel loans. So thereby you will be able to have a sample of different things. And the materiality in terms of advances is fairly well established because RBI has specifically stated what is a large advance.
Yes, sir, I think that's all for the time being. You can kindly continue your presentation.
So we are talking about the technical non-compliance, stock statement, renewal, quarterly classification, multiple parameters. So in the case when you are using software, whether it is Finacle or it is Banks 2000 or whatever it is, if an account is having some irregularities, whether it is in terms of it's all classified as SMA 1, 2 and all. In that, there will be multiple parameters. If there are multiple parameters of an account is having beyond the drawing power, or whether it is outside the it is continuous sanction limit, okay, and the renewal has not happened, stock statement has not been given, okay, term loan repayment has not happened. All these will show one parameter. It will show as account is irregular, number of days it will show, but all the parameters will not be there, only one among them will be there. Okay, so for an auditor, what we need to do is that if that parameter shows only outstanding, the outstanding is beyond 60 days as on 29th February 2019 or 20, we will think that it's only because of that, so he is eligible for the dispensation. However, if the stock statements have not come and the renewal has not happened, okay, that is a separate parameter for asset classification. So when you are looking at it currently, kindly look at all the parameters which are not right in that. So you need to access that, go to the codes, understand what are all the codes which are there, and ask them for it. Then they will go through that and tell code 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of them are not there, whereas only one will get flagged. So as auditor, we need to look at each of the parameters and go about doing our audit. Asset classification of NPAs I covered just now. Interest reversal also, software issues I have covered. Substandard to doubtful also I covered. And what we need to look at it is in case an account has been given and the account has become NPA within 12 months of its sanctioning and disbursement, such accounts are what is called as quick mortality accounts. That means to say the account has become bad in a very short time. Such accounts you need to see whether there is any element of fraud in it. In fact, the question which was asked by Tara Bavinji about how to go about frauds, you can also look at it whether if there is going to be a loan which is given in June 2019 and has become NPA in December 2019 within 6 months, you need to see whether there is any collusion, fraud, and anything which has happened, because in such short time of having made an assessment and having given a loan, whether how the loan can become NPA in such. Okay, and if the account is going to be showing sicknesses and weaknesses of diversion of funds, such account also has to be classified as per the EWS. One of the parameters is if there is a diversion of funds resulting in that, that is also a fraud. So you will have to report about that also. Then when it comes to an account which is NPA, you will have to make provisions. When you are making provisions, the bank would have said that okay, we have a valuation report. As per the valuation report, the outstanding is 2 crores, the valuation report says 3 crores, and based on that, the account would be classified as fully secured. So provision will be on the basis of D1, D2 or whatever it is, because D3 will be 100%. If it is a D1 account, what further needs to be seen is they would have put that account for sale, the property for sale. If the property has failed in the auction, then it is not the value of the property which has been given in the valuation report given by a valuer. It is not the price which has been quoted as a reserve price in the auction. It is not the price at which it is stated by the bank. What needs to be looked into is what is the realizable value. For example, 3 times the auction has failed. Okay. and every time they reduce the price by 10%. So what we need to do is the current reserve price minus a percentage for the fourth time or the fifth time when it does not happen. We'll have to keep derating the value from the reserve price, which is for which the property has not been sold, as a realizable value of property, and based on that the provisioning has to be done. In terms of MSME restructuring, I dealt with this MSME restructuring earlier, but the points which we need to keep in mind is that in terms of MSME restructuring is permissible even for service industries. Okay. Not only manufacturing industries, even service industries are eligible for that. But however, what you need to keep in mind as auditors is whether the service industry will fall within the classification for which it is there. For example, in the service industry, the amount of investment in plant and machinery or equipment cannot exceed 10 crores. Okay. So this has been, in 5 crores for the service industries, 10 crores for manufacturing industry. So you'll have to look into the previous financial statements, and you'll have to look at the gross block, not the depreciated net block. You'll have to look at the investment means of gross block, and then ensure that these MSMEs are actually MSMEs, and just because they are registered with GST or registration has been obtained to MSME Act earlier, okay, if an account has become if a borrower is an MSME earlier, but subsequently he has undertaken an expansion and he has invested about 30 crores into plant and machinery, such accounts are not eligible for MSME restructuring. So we'll have to be careful while doing that, while ensuring that it's treated as an MSME and the benefits of MSME restructuring is given to them. Restructured accounts classified as substandard. So what happens is that, as I told you, if an account is restructured, for 12 months it has to continue in the same block. It cannot, even if all the repayments are made, it cannot be upgraded. Okay. Then subsequently, if an account is restructured, okay, and becomes NPA, when account becomes NPA after it is restructured, it cannot become substandard asset, because on account becoming NPA of a restructured account, then the original terms of repayment should be considered for purpose of classifying the account as NPA and not on the basis of the current NPA. For example, a loan was given in 2014 and the repayments are commenced in 2017, and because of some reason the account have not been able to pay that. So in 2017 they had given the restructuring. From 2019 onwards it has to be paid. The original repayment should have commenced in 2017. It's been postponed to say June 2019. So June 2019 the payments are not coming. So the bank has the branches and the bank has classified the account as substandard asset for the year ended say June 2019, which is not right, because if an account is restructured and becomes NPA and the restructured terms not having been complied with, then the original repayment term should be looked at, which means the account should have started paying from June 2017. So the account should be classified as a doubtful advance, D1 or D2 as the case may be, and should not be a substandard asset. So in the course of audit of non-performing advances, substandard asset, you will have to look at whether it was NPA, whether it has to be downgraded as because of the non-paying earlier period, whether it's a restructured account. All these things should be looked at by the branch. The next issue is on loss asset classification. Many cases we have also come very often, including the system there. If the security value is less than 10%, including the sale which I told, failed sale or whatever it is, the security value falls below 10%, such account should be classified as loss asset, though there may not be any change in the provision required between a loss asset and a doubtful 3 advance. Asset classification is still not correct. So as an auditor, we are expected to declassify the account from D3 to loss asset, and that will be required to be done. Then the early warning signals, there are 42 of them, which you can have a look at it and as part of the circular which is there, and that will give you a fair idea of what is the concentration you have to do in large advances when you go for audit. Then sir, as part of yes sir.
There are two questions. Can we able to take it?
We'll take it. Yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah, sir. This is from C.A. Nagappanesu.
Yeah.
How to find group financing and then converting sick accounts into good accounts? Is it possible? How to find group financing?
Okay.
And converting sick accounts into good accounts.
Very simple. If you say,
is it possible to undertake such?
Is it possible to
undertake such process in short period given to us?
Yeah, very simple.
Ensure, yeah.
Yeah, tell me. Yeah.
Negligence. Yeah.
Negligence?
Sure. No negligence within the limited time span. Please enlighten.
Time is not a constraint, Nagapane. So what happens is that accounts which are, consortium accounts or multiple accounts. Okay. What happens is that if you are asking for the CRILC report, okay, you will get to have that. Or if the advance is less than 5 crores, okay, generally it will not come for multiple banking or for your consortium banking. So the CRILC report will give you the details of the asset classification in all other banks as a whole. Okay, so you can ask the branch to give you the download and give you the CRILC report. Second is that if it is less than 5 crores also, multiple banking. For example, two banks are there, and the limit is say 4.5 crores. It may not be a consortium advance. Then you can ask for the minutes and the of the multiple banking, what has happened, and also the banking incumbents would have met and discussed about it, whether it's the joint security or whether it is inspection of the security or what are all the assets which are there. So you will be able to go through the file and look at it of our large advances. You should be able to do that. Second is in terms of the SIC advances. Okay, nurturing of SIC advances has to necessarily fall into one of the permitted mechanisms of RBI. For example, MSMEs are permitted by that circular dated January 1, 2019 or currently 11th February 2020. Any other account which is restructured, okay, should be automatically classified as an NPA account as per para 11.1.2 of the RBI circular. It says that on the moment an account is restructured, it will be downgraded. However, the exceptions to that is that where it is by way of a dispensation of this RBI in terms of MSME accounts, or where as a class of assets, for example, if there is going to be a change for a class of assets, not for an individual borrower, okay, where the like what is happening currently in terms of the COVID, it's across all the borrowers who are all eligible. Such accounts are not treated as restructured and you don't have to downgrade it. Or where the nursing happens, or third one which happens is in terms of your agricultural advances. In terms of your agricultural advances, where there has been a drought, based on the drought notification by the state government and the state level banker committee, or based on the district wise where the drought has been affected or any natural calamity, not necessarily drought. There is a circular of natural calamities of relief measures for agriculture due to natural calamities. There's an RBI circular which talks very detailed about how to go about in the case of natural calamities. In such cases, additional finance has to be done. The additional finance, even for an account which is non-performing, additional finance can be done. That additional finance will not be treated as an NPA account. So similarly for industries, small and medium enterprises, accounts which are NPA or non-NPA, what is called as refinancing them for sick industries is permitted for nursing the program back to normalcy. The original account can be NPA. The nursing program for 1 year will continue to be a standard asset. At the end of 1 year, if the repayment is coming, then the account can get classified as standard asset. Or else even this additional financing for nursing will also be treated as an NPA account. And if the bank is trying to camouflage an account as NPA, that is something which as auditors we need to be always having our antennas on. And it happens very often. Okay. The means adopted are one, there may be a credit closer to the end of the year. Second, if there is going to be an element of fraud or pollution or whatever it is, there may be some dormant accounts of balances which are lying in savings bank accounts. What they will do is they will pass an entry on 28th or 29th March, debiting the savings bank account and crediting this, and on 3rd or 4th April reversing the entry. These are all possible. Okay. Or where there are accounts which are not regular. Okay. But what happens is that the stock statement would not have been obtained. But they will continue to update the stock statement of previous months as if it is received for the current month also. Okay. The same values would be mentioned. For example, stock statement of July 2019 was the last stock statement received. Okay. Instead of saying that the stock statement not being received and classifying the account as NPA, July stock statement will be keyed in as a stock statement for August, September, October, and all with the same values into the system. So the system will never be able to make out. One of the questions which was asked, how the system is not classifying. The same stock statement is punched every month as stock statement and drawing power is determined. System will never be able to make out. So you will be finding out whether the stock movement is happening and if it is not happening. So as auditor, we need to look at all these things for the purpose of this. Anything else you can ask me separately. I hope I have answered your query.
So there are two questions from Tara Bevinje. Can I just go through?
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. In case of substandard assets, the security value would have eroded. For example, in the case where a vehicle or a building is the security, would have been depreciated, but the bank would be considering the value of the asset at the time of loan sanction. What is the auditor's responsibility in such a situation? Yes,
Auditor's
question one.
responsibility. Yeah. I'll answer this, then we'll take the next question. Okay. The auditor's responsibility in terms of provisioning, asset classification and provisioning as per RBI Master Circular, kindly note down and go through para 5.1.1 of the Master Circular. It very clearly says it is the responsibility of the bank management and the statutory auditor for proper asset classification and provisioning. So whether the bank does or not, the responsibility is cast directly on the auditors by the Reserve Bank of India by this paragraph. Okay, so we need to do that. Next, second is, if an account is classified as substandard asset, if as a statutory auditor we are satisfied that it is only a substandard asset, then the provision has no relation to the security value at all. It is on the gross value minus the amount of unrealized interest which is reversed. On the net value, provision is made at 15% or 25% as the case may be, or 20%, whatever it is. So the security value does not arise in substandard assets. The security value does have an impact on substandard assets to determine whether it is to be treated as substandard asset or to be treated as a doubtful asset. For example, an account becomes NPA for the first time, but the net worth falls below 50%. For example, as in your case you said, the car is given, vehicle loan is given, the vehicle is burnt. Okay, there is no vehicle, or there is a theft of the vehicle itself is not. Then it is not correct to classify the account as substandard asset. Even though it has happened on 28th March, straight away it has to be classified as a doubtful asset. And once it is doubtful asset, we'll have to look at what is the realizable value. If the entire car is damaged due to fire, only the compensation will come by way of your insurance can be the security value. You can't take the value which is shown on record or the depreciated value. Okay. So the substandard asset, if it is substandard, we don't have to bother about security. But whether it is substandard or should go as doubtful is one of the things which as auditors we need to look at. And after it is doubtful, we need to see what is the realizable value. And in our opinion, we need to ensure the realizable value security will be the value which will turn out. If in our opinion it will be less than what is stated, including the valuation reports or whatever it is, we are free to revise the value of security downwards and pass an information. Next question.
Yeah, next question is in continuation of earlier question on immovable assets. Position in case of movable assets such as stocks, where there is no stock statement submitted for 6 to 8 months. At what value should the asset be taken?
If the stock statements are more than 6 months and not come, the value to be taken as value of security is 0.
Yeah, then I think if it is a...
Not be considered.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I think we can proceed, sir. Thank you.
Good. So now we move into, we'll take the questions as and when it comes. But if we have been doing all these things, okay, and if, for example, we have come to a stage where sort of look at what are all the things which we look at during the course of our audit, and what are all the things which we need to obtain as part of our audit documentation to say that we have done a proper audit. What are all things to done is that, especially in large advances or advances which you have taken as sample for your purpose of audit, kindly ask for the process note. A process note is one where the proposal is put up, the recommendation is being made, a detailed analysis of the borrower, his nature of business, what is the limits which he is enjoying, what is the credit track record, his financial statement summary, the amount of security which is there, net worth of the borrower and his personal capacities, what are all the securities offered to the bank of the borrower, of the guarantor. Okay, all these are documented at the end of it. Okay, a recommendation is made by the branch incumbent or by the competent authority and approved by the competent authority. This is called as a process note. Kindly obtain this. And if you read that large advances, the entire history, including if there are going to be sickness or whatever it is, the projected turnover is say for example, somebody has 2 crore working capital limit. He has given a projection of 10 crores as the turnover which will happen. Okay. Whereas as against the 10 crores, he achieves only about 80 lakhs. All this will be documented in that. If his turnover is 80 lakhs, he is not eligible for a 2 crore limit itself. His limit should be only 1/5 of it, it should be only 16 lakhs as against 80 lakhs of turnover. So that means his entire loan of 2 crores does not support the amount of this. Similarly, in that all the your ratios will be there. If you see your current ratio is less than 1, then automatically, which means there is no net current asset at all. If there is no net current asset and there is no margin, then automatically drawing power won't be there. If the drawing power is not there, you will automatically classify the account as NPA. So this is how you will be able to quickly look at various information which could be available for you as branch auditor to understand the health and the asset classification of the branch of the particular borrower, and this will enable you to make an assessment. For example, if the sanction limit is 2 crores and the borrower has say achieved 12 crores limit and is asking for an enhancement to 2.4 crores, then it is perfectly in line with what is the projection charge. Then if the process is 15 crores, based on that, he is asking for a higher limit, it's still permissible. So 3 crores he is asking, then it will be correctly there. So determination of maximum permissible bank finance, all this having the process note and going through that quickly will enable the auditor to have a complete hang of large borrower accounts. Then second thing, obtain the sanction letter copies. Go through the terms of the sanction letter. All the terms of the sanction letter should be complied with. And how will you find out whether all the terms of the sanction letters are complied with or not? All advances today about 10 lakhs in most banks. Okay, what is called as a legal audit report and credit audit report. In terms of legal audit report, all the loan documents, whether it is a DPN, whether it is the agreement, hypothecation agreement, or whether any of those legal documents which are required, whether it is the title deed to the property which is given as security, all these, okay, is covered by way of the legal audit report. So if you have access to the legal audit report, if a loan is sanctioned in say September 2019, and by November 2019 legal audit report is there, instead of asking for all the individual records of legal, if you go through the legal audit report will say what are all the documents seen, what are all the observations, and everything is okay. So if you document it and have a copy of the legal audit report, all the documentation related things are available for you instead of you going through each of that. Similarly, all the terms of sanction, whether it is if additional finance has to be brought in as margin, or whether it is in terms of, there are two things. One is pre-credit audit report and post-credit audit report. Pre-credit audit report is an assessment and things like that. Post-credit audit report is compliances of that, including bringing in the margin or whether the charges have been created or no. Charges can also be looked into in the CERSAI portal also. Okay. So the credit audit report will tell you about the terms and conditions of the sanction. Especially the post-credit audit report will tell you whether all the conditions which has been given, the things are over or not. And beyond that, there will also be communication between the competent authority and the branch. If you go through the files of the large borrower, where any of these things are not there, they will be asking the branch to comply with that, and they have to give a closure report of this credit audit reports. The closure report of the individual borrower is there. You will know that all the parameters related to the documentation and legal, everything is completed. Next is you ask wherever accounts are more than 1 crore of working capital limit is there, stock audit report will be there. Stock audit report will be able to throw a lot of light on the availability, then the realizability, then the reporting, and also the working of the drawing power will all form part of your stock audit report. And if you find significant variance in the stocks which are reported month on month, stock audit report and the financial statements given in the previous year, as an auditor, you need to give effect to this in assessing the standard asset classification. And if in your opinion you find a significant variance between the reported stocks and what is there in the stock audit report and the financial statements, then you need to go about to reclassify the accounts as non-performing wherever it warrants. Then the branch will also be having inspection of it periodic. So now what we are asking them is that if it's a large borrower and if it is there, okay, and as a statutory auditor, what we can do is that when the inspection is happening, if it has happened, the report will be there. Even otherwise, you can always call upon the particular, for example, stores is there. Okay, inventories are held in place. You can call the borrower in large advances and ask him to show the physically available. Today, with the technology which is available, quickly you will be able to run through the entire stores or where the stocks are there. Okay. And not that you will be able to count or anything, at least physically visibility of that could be made. So, in certain cases, what we have done is that where the units are closed, okay, we tell the branch incumbent, central auditor sitting in some place, we ask the branch incumbent to go there and show us the place also. And if we find the unit is closed, then we take a call that such accounts cannot be classified as a standards. So you can look at the inspections. Then the concurrent auditor's report is another wealth of information. Individual account wise, the information will be available. And they are also expected to physically inspect and report about the borrower accounts once in a year, at least large borrower accounts. So you will find that the concurrent audit would have covered the large borrower and go through that, take a photocopy of it and keep it as part of your audit evidence. Then there are accounts which are large advances where if there is any divergence in the view of asset classification or provisioning, RBI would have commented. So as branch auditor, you will have to ask the branch that whether any of the branch accounts has been commented by RBI. Generally, they will not even know that what is RBI comments. They will say no such accounts. If they say anything like that, as part of your MRL, you will have to management representation letter, you will have to put it and then take it. Otherwise, you take a separate letter saying that there are no RBI commented accounts in this branch. If any such accounts are there, then as branch auditor, generally what happens is that you'll have to see whether the asset classification as reported by RBI is there in the closing statements. If it is not there, you'll have to downgrade it. Similarly, the provisions, whether the security value, if it has been reported differently by them and this. For example, RBI will have much more information about large borrower accounts. Generally, at the branch level, you may not have. For example, no, if there will be a consortium, okay, or certain other events that are happening in different banks, they will have idea about what is happening there. So they will come to this bank, they will also have the same information, which you and me will not have. So based on which, they will remove the amount of the security values which are reported here. For example, in a consortium advance, the leader will be having all the security and things like that. Whereas the individual member bank will not have all the details. So you will be relying on the information which is available and classifying the account as fully secure. Whereas they will say that no, this is not fully secured, it has to be valued at only this much. So if there is RBI commented account is there, take a copy of it and see that the effect of it is there in the asset classification and provisioning of the branch. And after doing all these things, one of the requirements of audit is also that we need to sort of discuss all the points which comes to our knowledge, okay, with the branch manager, okay, whether it is in terms of your asset classification, whether it is in terms of your provisioning increase, or whether it is all weaknesses which has been found which will form part of your long form audit report, okay, or whether it is going to be any issues related to tax audit where disallowances have to happen at 40A, 1A or whatever it is. All these points, okay, as part of your standards on audit as well as part of your statutory audit of the branch, they are expected to discuss it with the branch manager. And then after in the MOCs, what we pass, we are expected to get the signature of the branch manager also. And while passing MOCs, one thing which we have seen is that we have to necessarily give detailed reasoning for MOC. So that even as statutory auditor, central auditors, when somebody sees, okay, if the branch or the bank has to put out a counter argument saying that no, sir, no, this continues to be, it should continue to be a standard asset, not a substandard asset or doubtful asset, as the branch auditor said. Okay, the branch auditor's perspective will be available for the central statutory auditor to consider. Okay, and in my personal experience as a statutory central auditor, I can tell you our experiences that invariably, whenever a branch auditor gives an MOC, we don't allow that to be changed at the concerned unless there is some arithmetical error. For example, in a substandard asset where 15% provision has to be made, Okay, either 10% or 20% is made. That those sort of arithmetical errors are the only changes which we as centralized auditors permit. We don't allow the branch auditors past MOCs to be changed at the time of consolidation as centralized audit. Then one of the things which we need to be done as branch auditor is in our own audit standards as well as in our first line of defense, the second line of defense is our working papers becomes our first line of defense. Our second line of defense is the management representation. In terms of the management representation letter, what needs to be done is kindly document, prepare a management representation letter, take it, ask the branch managers to sign. Normally they should sign. Some banks do have the hesitation not to sign. What you need to bring in is that there is a standards on audit which talks about management representation letter. It says that if the auditee is failing to issue the management representation letter, okay, and if in the opinion of the branch auditor that in the absence of it, it does not give them the comfort that what is being there, no material misstatements have been omitted to be brought to the notice of the auditor, the branch auditor can give that as part of his disclaimer in the main report itself, saying that no, that in the absence of the information and the material statements which are not being brought to our notice, we are unable to sort of comment on that, if any. Before you go about to put it in your main report, if you tell them you are saying that you will not issue the management representation letter, will warrant me to qualify my main report because of standards on audit. Okay, it will make them to see sense to give the MRL instead of getting the qualification. So this is one way in which as branch auditor you should be able to sort of impress upon them and ask for the management representation. While having said so, I will also tell you that when the current year I talked about the situation of the number of branches can get reduced in the case of bank branch audit. I'm remembering this out of turn. As central statutory auditors this year, a couple of banks have already sent the branch list of which is audited. A couple of banks are yet to communicate only the branches. They have given the appointment letter but not communicated the branches. We as auditors of one particular bank, we had a discussion. We impressed upon the management, notwithstanding the circular of 27th April 2020 by RBI to say that 90% of fund-based and non-fund-based to be only covered, others need not be covered. We impressed upon the bank that there should be no change in the coverage of the audit compared to the previous years and what has been communicated to the branch auditors. For example, if there are 2000 branches to be audited the last year and the same 2000 have been communicated to the branch auditors or not communicated, they should continue to have all the 2000 branches to be audited without a reduction in a single branch. And I am very happy to share with you, the bank has taken our perspective, and in that particular bank in which we are auditing, they have said that they will not make any change. The same number of branches which are audited last year, and as per the requirement of last year's norms, this year also all the branches will come on audit. Having said that, they also said that in case there are very small branches, for example, 1/5 of the branches is less than 20 crores have to be audited, that would also have been allotted to somebody. And if they say, for example, 12 crore one branch is there, but it's in a very remote place. Okay. In such a case, if there is a difficulty for the branch auditor to go to such remote place because of the situation, and if he expresses his inability to go to such remote place, then they may exempt the branch auditor due to considerations like this not to get it audited. Otherwise, from the bank's point of view, we have insisted and they have also agreed to have all the branches as in the normal course to be audited. This is something, if each of the central statutory auditors sort of impresses upon the banks, most of the banks will be agreeing to that because ultimately for them, the audit schedule and timelines are what is important. This is something which I forgot to tell you earlier, so I thought I'll bring it to your notice. Then as branch auditors, we have to form an opinion and our audit report has to be Form 700, 705, 706. 700 is unmodified opinion, 705 is modified opinion, 706 is a disclaimer. Okay. And if there is branch auditor format is like that only. In case a format is not in line with this, kindly ensure you give your report only in this form. Yeah. Then finally, when you look at it, if a situation comes in there are hotspots, for example, as of date, whether it's Maharashtra, Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, Chennai, then Ahmedabad, Jaipur, Indore, Hyderabad, there is huge amount of COVID cases. What happens? The SEBI having extended the time limit till only 30th June, which means the branch audit should be completed not later than 15th of June. Okay, then only the statutory auditors will be able to complete it, and before 30th June the results can be announced. If we are not able to start and complete our audit before 15th June, there may come a situation in the current year that we may do offline bank branch audit of certain branches, not all. In which case, most of the records and documents which we will be relying upon will be offsite. Then it may make sense, okay, to bring that in the main report, saying that because of this situation, the reliance has been placed on information which has been furnished offline, and which has been relied upon for the purpose of expressing. So this may be a very relevant one as part of your audit report this year. In case of a situation going forward, enabling the audit to be offline this year as against online. So we come to the sort of the situation of a presentation being completed. I was told that we will have a half an hour question and answer session, so I sort of kept it to be about 1.5 hours of presentation. And now I'm open for questions. And in case questions are not there, I can offline start taking out more practical issues and then dealing upon them. But I would like to first give preference to members' queries. Yes, Satish. Any questions? No? Okay. Now let me take you to long form audit report, which see the long form audit report which gets done by the branch auditors generally is yes, no, not applicable. This is a matter which has come to the notice of the Reserve Bank of India that the very purpose of it is that, as per standards on audit, communication with those charged with governance is part of your audit process. And in case of those which are not having an impact on the financial statements, but a detailed report is called upon on certain parameters by the Reserve Bank of India from the branch auditors. This is what is given in the long form audit. But what is expected is, under each of the heads, a detailed report is called upon by the Reserve Bank of India. And as central auditors, what happens is, we consolidate the points which has been given under various headings and combine them, and then make a critical assessment of the internal control policies, procedures, processes, what has been practice followed by them, weaknesses, and then design and tell them that they need to improve, whether it is in terms of the review renewal processes, whether it is in terms of inspection, whether it is in terms of compliances with the various audit observations and closure notes and things like that, or whether it is in terms of insurance, under insurance, or any other parameters, or in terms of cash holding, whether the cash holding and the secure and the type of the twin cashier and another person keeping a control over that, okay, or the securities charged to the bank, the controls over that, the charges creation, the deficiencies in the documentation, or any of these things, are old items not being written off, contingent liabilities, frauds. All these are expected to be in detail reported in the long form audit. as branch auditors, kindly pay sufficient attention on this. If you are looking at large advances, kindly look at all the parameters of pre-sanction, all procedures, formalities, including obtaining the application forms, the assessment of the requirement for the loan, then making a visit, and then forming the recommendation, sending it to the competent authority. After that, the sanction letter is given. After that, the disbursement happens, and then follow-up is being done. And in case of disbursement, the disbursement has to happen based on the terms of sanction, especially if it is term loan. It cannot be a bullet disbursement. It has to be on the basis of the stages of completion and progress. Based on that, the release has to happen, and the release has to happen directly to the suppliers and not be reimbursed unless the reimbursement is permitted as part of the sanction terms itself. Okay. Similarly, post disbursement monitoring. In terms of post disbursement monitoring, there are lots of things which can be done, especially if it's a large advance above 5 crores and above, especially working capital. There is something called as a quarterly reporting system. Okay. Quarterly reporting system, QAS 1, 2, 3 will give. QAS 1 will talk about the current quarter, okay, and QAS 2 will be talking about the half year and yearly, and QAS 3 will be what is the projection which is being done and the variance analysis. So if the QAS documents are not being given, then it will warrant levying penal interest of 2%. So all these things of post-sanction monitoring and disbursement and obtention of documentation, all these things and weaknesses are expected to be reported by the branch auditor. So kindly take LFAR as a very serious thing, not just as no not applicable, and leave it at it. Then finally coming to the tax audit. In terms of tax audit, if you are even if you are not given the access to your remote location, sitting in your house today, you can ask for the documents related to the tax audit. For example, the profit and loss account. Okay, the workings of the TDS or salaries or rent or contract or security or telephone or whatever it is. Once you see the P&L account, you can map that and ask them the workings of how the TDS has been worked out. And you can also ask them the dates of remittance of those things, the challan copies, and the quarterly returns filing. All these things, even much before you go to the branch, you can ask the branch to send you. And once they send it to you, the completion of the tax audit can be completed 100% even before hitting the branch. So this is one thing, tax audit with the cooperation of branch can be completely done offsite this year. It will enable you to save time and also to sort of pay more time and attention during a physical visit to the branch. And in terms of the certifications which are there are a couple of certifications which are to be done at the branch level. Out of the many, few which are important is, one is the interest subvention. Interest subvention is applicable for MSMEs, where 2% interest subvention is to be given for all advances which has been given from 1st November 2019 to 31st March 2020. And going forward, if any subsequent they relax certain conditions related to that. So that certification may come in the current year. Otherwise, this would have been completed last year. Then for textile industries, there is some certification which are there for under the textile industry. Some interest subvention is there. Then interest subvention is there for educational loans where it is there. Interest subvention is there for MSMEs. Interest subvention is there for agricultural advances. These are the 5 different interest subventions which will be applicable. Kindly go through them because it is a certificate. You need to be very careful in certifying them, and based on your certificate, it will be placed by the central auditor. And coming to COVID, especially in COVID, there is going to be a situation. The COVID situation came to notice post 31st March, which means the accounts would have been classified in the normal course by the core banking as of 31st March 2020. Now that the dispensation has come, how is it that an account which was eligible and the sanctioning of that happens will become performing now? It would have been already classified as NPA. For example, if an account was say 75 days overdue on 29th February, on 31st March, if nothing has happened, would have become 105 days on 31st March. So account would have been classified as NPA. How will you make it as standard asset? So there are two processes. One, couple of banks are rerunning their program for March quarter, whereby this will go and a revised closing statements gets generated. Then, based on the parameter which they have done, the accounts which are created because of this, from the original classification of NPA to this, gets into the pool of standard assets. So, as a branch auditor, how will you make out? This is $1 million question, because there will be, say, 5,000 standard assets. 8 accounts which have been given this dispensation will be part of that 5,000 accounts. Earlier, 4,992 standard assets would have been there. These 8 would have been part of a NPA account. What you can look at as branch auditor is, in case the bank has taken a policy to rerun this program, the original program which was sent to the branch, if it is available at the branch, ask them to give you a copy of that. Compare what are all the things which are in NPA in that, which are no more in NPA in the current one, because it's easier to make out 8 than all the 5,000. So that which was there as NPA in the first run, not there now. You will have to pay attention on those accounts, list out those accounts, and then go about to see whether it satisfies the criteria, whether the sanction has happened by the competent authority, and based on that, it has been upgraded into a standard. This is an audit perspective we need to know. However, there is another perspective. There are banks where they have been following what is called as a monthly classification. Some banks are doing quarterly, some banks are doing monthly. If a bank is doing a monthly classification, okay, then you can ask for the February run and the March run. Okay. So what will happen is that the accounts which are NPA as on February run should continue as an NPA. That which was run for March alone, okay, would have classified these accounts as NPA. So accounts which became NPA between February and March alone can be taken out, and those accounts can be verified for whether it is correct or not. The third approach is the bank in which we are auditing. We had insisted that we would not like to burden the branch auditor to look out for accounts which are eligible, for which sanction has been given and classified as standard assets pursuant to this 17th April circular. In order to enable the branch auditor, what we have told them is that since you have a monthly run, the bank in which we are doing the monthly run, we told them to generate whatever was generated as on 31st March will continue as the final statements, which means such account would have got classified as NPA. However, they will generate one more statement, which will be an additional statement to the closing statement, in which only those accounts which are eligible and satisfying that and for which the approval is given will be given as a separate return, separate statement. So you know that 8 accounts are separately given to you. You will have to verify these 8 accounts and find out whether it is eligible, whether the sanction is given, and then certify the correctness. So this is what we have done, and based on which the asset classification, interest accounting, all that can be done, because it enables the branch auditor to quickly ascertain these things, and also as statutory auditors, it enables us to have a control also for making additional 5% provision or 10% provision by certain. So these are all the ways in which the branch auditor will be asked to look at this particular requirement of certifying the COVID-related certificate for accounts which are given this dispensation in the current year. Friends, this brings me to the end of this session. I would like to personally take this opportunity to thank each of the person who has been involved in the whole process, especially my fellow professional brethren, for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts with all of you, and the opportunity provided through the mechanism of KSEA and its entire team of officers and the president, chairman, secretary, and other office bearers. Then coordination by Santosh Raj, then Vijay Kumar, then Satish Kalpure. And now I am open for questions.
Sir, there are a few questions have come.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Whether nomenclature of legal audit report is same in all banks or different in different banks. Virendra Kumar. Virendra.
Wherein the legal audit report is a standard process in all banks.
Okay.
And it has been mandated by RBI for all advances above 50 lakhs. It is mandated by RBI for all advances above 50 lakhs. Is a mandatory requirement of RBI. So all the banks have to comply with it.
Yeah. So next question is, as management representation letter alone itself is not a conclusive audit evidence or sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, how can an auditor rely on the written representation as per SCA 580? Karthik.
Karthik, as I told you earlier, management representation letter is the second line of defense. The first line of defense is, if you had seen my presentation, which will be shared with you, there has to be an audit plan, there has to be an audit program, there has to be an audit methodology which you will go about, then you will have audit documentation, and after all these things, external confirmations or whatever it is, as I told you, stock audit reports, sanction letter copies, then process note, then inspection reports, insurance copies of large advances, all these are your first line of defense. Then there are certain things which are not covered and which is much more than this, or something not brought to your notice. So management representation letter covers you in terms of a second line of defense. But it is also a mandatory audit standard requirement to obtain a MRL. So to that extent, it helps you to do it. Only an MRL without any of the former will be of no use.
So here's an interesting question for you. Go to the nearest branch of bank to our office and then have the access to the books of the branch that we are supposed to audit, subject to taking all security measures. From Mohan.
Mohan, it is very much possible. With the core banking, you don't have to necessarily go to a branch which is allotted. Any of the bank branch, if they are able to cooperate with you, you will be able to go and access the same thing, except for the files and physical records which they hold at the branch. For example, the stock audit report or the credit audit report, legal report or inspection report or insurance copies. Okay, these are all not available in the offsite branch. Whereas anything to do with the system, as I told you, audit in the system is very much possible in any of the branches. Whether you want to go into their server, you want to access all the report servers, anything which you want to look at in the system, you will be able to do is offsite with any other branch also. Insofar as you are able to get that scanned and sent from that branch, you will still be able to do the audit. For example, if you are getting audit of one branch in Ahmedabad, but if you are sitting here and because of the problem, you are not able to go, if the branch manager here in one particular branch, say for example you are in Malaysia, you go to the Malaysian branch and they permit you and you are able to sit there and get your access there, documents and all the report servers you access from there, and coordinate with the Ahmedabad branch, and they keep sending all the documents by way of scanned copies or through mails and things like that to you. You can definitely do that. If the situation does not improve by first week of June, this year we may possibly experience this sort of audit. Very much possible.
Yeah. So next question. In the CC or OD advances, in the light of circular dated 27/3/2020, out of order status is to be determined ignoring dues for the period after 1st March 2020. Whether credits in such advances also after 1/3/2020 are to be ignored to up to 29 February are recovered is for Sanjay.
Sanjay, the point is that if an account is a standard asset as on 29th February, okay, the only reason why asset classification can undergo a change is on account of not servicing interest or installment which has fallen due on or before 31st December 2019. Because as on 31st March, with the 90-day norm, if the interest or installment as on 31st March 31st December 2019, okay, if not service would have been 90 days. So with this dispensation, okay, what happens is the account having been classified as a standard asset as on February 2019 naturally means the interest and installment which are overdue are less than 60 days. The interest and installment is overdue less than 60 days. Whether you consider the interest or not because of the